Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Truly Myers. I am the autoimmune pain expert, and I'm talking today about why your microbial garden or your microbial self, the flora that make up the garden that inhabit your body, have a lot to do with what's going on for autoimmune pain, autoimmune symptoms, and how impacting that can make a dramatic change towards how those symptoms are coming about, towards how that pain is feeling on a daily basis. And it starts with understanding our most biggest interaction with the outside environment. I know a lot of people talk about, where did the autoimmune symptoms come from? Where did the autoimmune diagnosis come from? Did it come from a medication that I took, or did it come from a specific virus that I picked up? Maybe there were molds in the environment. So there's all these different factors that could have influenced your individual symptoms for why you have the autoimmune symptoms you do. And with when we think about what is our biggest interaction with the environment, it is with the foods that we eat. They are literally being brought in regularly throughout the day into our bodies, and that is the most and biggest impact that we are having. We aren't injecting things daily. We aren't doing other kinds of things that are getting that close to our systems inside of our bodies as much as the foods that we're eating. So when the food comes in, the lining of the intestines is literally the only distance between the inside, the outside environment and the internal parts of the body. So the internal network of the body, the internal blood system of the body. So there's this very tiny layer of cells, the epithelial lining of our intestines, that are keeping the bad from coming in and making sure that only nutrients are being absorbed, not pathogenic bacteria, not viruses. So it's the integrity of the lining of the intestines is an extremely important part of overall health, so that we can basically regulate what is coming in and what is coming out. So that border, that wall between us makes a huge difference in how we feel every day, in terms of how much inflammation we experience and how much pain we experience. And so how we can understand more about this when we think about how it has evolved, how the human being has evolved over time to regulate this little, border between the outside world and the internal workings of the body. And that comes from understanding, how do we keep that tiny layer of cells at its most pristine, most powerful and defensive place. So for example, if you think about a car and how the paint on the car is keeping the internal the internal parts, the internal metals, the internal aspects of the car from having the erosion from the outside world. So the erosion of the paint, or the erosion of with rain, or with salt, or with even wind. So that is being the integrity of the car is really impacted by how well of a paint job there is, and how well maybe there's even wax also put on that paint to help further the integrity of the surface of the car. So we want to keep the lining of the intestines in that same pristine, most defensive place. And the best way to do that is to make sure that the nutrition is there, right? So that those cells have access to the most nutrition that they need to keep their level at a pristine and best position that they can be, to defend against outside invaders, outside bacteria, outside viruses. And one of the biggest nutrients that fuels those cells is something called butyrate. And the reason why we have butyrate is because of the bacterial garden that we are growing. So those good bacteria that inhabit a healthy garden in our bodies, they are producing a substance that is crucial for those cells that line the intestine to act in their most definitive place, to act in their most powerful place. So if they aren't getting, so for example, if we think about, with trying to keep the integrity of a car, and we're not using the ingredients that would make sure that there's no rust that starts to happen on the metal of the car, if we're not using the right materials, the right paints or the right waxes, then the integrity of that car will not be very good. The same thing with the cells that line our intestines. If they aren't provided with the actual fuel, the actual ingredients that create the cell in a most strong and defensive place to only allow what needs to get through the cells and what needs to be kept out, then the cells cannot function as well as they should. So butyrate is a function of the healthy garden that we have. If the garden that we don't have, I'm about to sneeze. If the garden that we're currently growing is not producing butyrate, there is a relationship going on between the immune system and what level of butyrate is being used, what level of butyrate is coming into the cells of the intestine. So for example, if the immune system senses that there is very little butyrate that is being produced and is being absorbed into the cells that line the intestine, then the immune system will believe there is a lot of pathogenic bacteria that are going on in the garden of the cells, in the garden of the microflora that inhabit the intestines. And so the immune system pushes out more inflammatory substances and creates more inflammation because there's that lack of butyrate. So when there's healthful bacteria and they're producing enough butyrate, the immune system gets dialed back. The inflammation gets dialed back. And that is literally the relationship between the bacteria that inhabit us and the immune system's response. So in order to keep the immune system at a normalized level, we need to have a normal and healthful level of butyrate. In order to have a healthful level of butyrate going into the cells of the intestine to keep that barrier and that border between the outside world and the internal systems of the body, we need to have enough healthful microflora producing that butyrate. So you see how there's this like three systems here going on that literally depend on one another. So, when we think about, the trillions of bacteria that inhabit us, and, over the years that we've evolved, there is a, certain bacteria that are very pathogenic, so for example, the healthful bacteria are thinking, I don't want this person that I live in to be unhealthy and die, because then I die, right? So the bacteria are as much invested in the health of the organism that they live in, us, the human being. They're as much invested, like they want the human being to survive and thrive so that they have a home to live in, so that they survive and thrive. Now if you take something like a pathogenic bacteria, like cholera, for example, that is a bacteria that really could care less if we didn't survive and thrive, because cholera is spread through diarrhea. So cholera can get picked up by another host. It is not going to go down with the ship, right? So cholera does not have it is not a bacteria that is going to produce substances that will enable the organism that it lives in to survive and thrive, right? So the more of those pathogenic bacteria that are living in the gut that are not as invested in the survival of you, right? They don't care. They could care less if you are surviving and thriving, because they can continue to generate and proliferate and grow in other ways. Then the less butyrate there will be, right? Because they are not pathogenic. They are pathogenic bacteria. They're not healthful bacteria. So we want to eat in a way that fosters that garden to grow in, and also fosters the garden that will grow and produce that butyrate for the health of our lining of our intestines, to keep the integrity of that lining there, to stop the inflammation, to dial down the immune system, because the immune system is sensing the butyrate there, right? And as long as the butyrate there, the immune system is not going to over-respond with inflammatory response. So literally, it goes hand in hand together. And the fibers that we eat, right, the fibers in the whole foods that we eat are going to directly impact not only whether the right healthful bacteria are growing, but whether those healthful bacteria will also be producing butyrate. If there isn't enough fiber, the bacteria cannot produce butyrate, and the immune system immediately senses that this is not a healthful bacteria that's going on there, and the immune system fights, because it's like there's not enough butyrate. There must be a lot of pathogenic bacteria going on, so the inflammation will increase, and the symptoms go from there. So this is why it's so important to have a customized nutrition solution for you. This is why it's so important to have a customized nutrition solution that addresses the growing of a healthful garden of microflora and you. And unless that is there, it's the, all of the different ways that all of these things interact together are just not going to be addressed, and you're just not going to experience that level of results, that level of pain reduction, that level of symptom reduction, if all those things aren't there and intertwined together. And I just want to also talk to you about someone who had repeated issues with ulcerative colitis. That is, where there's an autoimmune condition. It's influencing the colon. It's causing a lot of inflammation. And she was doing all kinds of things. She was younger, in her 30s, but taking lots of prednisone to deal with the symptoms, but also wanting to start a family, and did get pregnant. She did lose her pregnancy with twins because of that, the malnutrition that was going on, because of the ulcerative colitis, because the symptoms weren't being addressed. And she had just multiple, in addition to the trauma and the horror of losing that pregnancy, she just still continued to experience a lot of the symptoms that go with ulcerative colitis, and not getting any relief, and not knowing if she was ever going to be able to carry a pregnancy full term because of all the symptoms that was going on. Everything she was eating was running right through her. She wasn't able to even, maintain in terms of the absorption of what she was currently eating. And even when she got, some remission with medications, basically meaning she got some relief from the symptoms she was experiencing, there was still a lot of tenderness, a lot of bloating, a lot of abdominal pain going on. And her fatigue was incredible also. I mean, if you are not getting the nutrition, your cells, not getting the nutrition to the cells, you are not going to experience energy levels that having a functioning system that absorbs nutrition is going to produce. I think often people think that there is a lot of things they can do to help with that energy level and the fatigue with something that they're taking, whether it be a supplement or a stimulant or an energy drink, or a specific food. And really, healthy energy levels are not because of stimulants and outside, supplements and things like that. A healthy energy level is literally because of the full system, every system of the body functioning and running at its best, its smoothest, its most nourished, well-nourished. That is a level of good energy levels, okay? It is not because of a supplement is needed an energy drink is needed, a caffeine stimulant is needed. It's literally because of everything flowing in the way that it's supposed to. And it's the inflammation level can directly impact whether everything is going to be flowing in all the systems that it needs to. So she was believing that she just couldn't have any more children, that she was just going to be childless and not be able to have a full pregnancy that's healthy. But when she was given a solution that addressed the symptoms, when she was given a solution that addressed the flora of her system, tending that inner garden of her microbial self, she would, when she was actually taught about how majority of the cells that inhabit her are actually not human cells, but microbial cells, and to get them fed, to get the healthful ones growing and at the level that they should be growing, resulted in a dramatic change in her life. All of her bloating and pain disappeared. She experienced, after 4 months, had such levels of health increase that she was actually able to get those levels, the lab levels of the autoimmune inflammatory markers in her blood back to normal, to where her doctor was giving her the green light. You can go ahead and try to have another pregnancy. You don't show any of the signs of the stress that was going on with that inflammation, with the ulcerative colitis. So she did get pregnant after that. So again, addressing all of the systems of the body, was addressing her reproductive system as well. Okay, so all of these things are intertwined, and they all can be affected with a healthful solution to addressing the microbial garden, addressing the nutrition absorption can be huge in terms of the overall health. Someone's asking about with multiple sclerosis, would the same apply? Absolutely, absolutely. There is a direct connection between the microbial garden and multiple systems in the body, even at the neurological level. So when the integrity of the gut is looked at and conserved, and the right absorption is applied, so that is feeding the neurological system as well. If the gut is not healthy, if the flora of the garden are not tended to, and they are not producing the amount of butyrate, the amount of toxins that are coming in is much higher, and those toxins affect neurological systems. So, we want to, not only is it, tending the garden in terms of producing that butyrate, but it's also increasing the integrity of the cells that line the gut, so that that it's not as much of a leaky barrier. When we talk about leaky gut, that's what we mean. The cells that are lining that intestine are not getting the nutrition that they need to stay a healthful and solid barrier, And if there isn't that solid barrier, then toxins that would otherwise not be a problem, okay? They would just be, flushed out, right? They would stay in a place that was safe. They wouldn't be crossing the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier in the brain. So a lot of things that can happen that affect, that are getting into the bloodstream can also cross the barrier that goes into the cells of the brain and affect that as well. So MS is absolutely affected, and can be immense changes with an overall solution that addresses the microbial self as well. And I want to encourage anyone who is in the situation where they feel that there's a lot of inflammation and pain, they feel that their immune system is dialed up because the immune system is getting the wrong message. Maybe there's not enough butyrate that's being produced for the cells of the intestines, that immune system is dialing up, the inflammation is high, and the symptoms are high. If that sounds like you, and you are at the place where it's time to address this, where it's time to get the help that you need to turn this around and not continue another day on this path, I did post a link that links to a presentation that I have that talks more about this issue as well as the other aspects of a solution for autoimmune conditions. And if that resonates with you, if you have the gut feeling that this is something that you would like to seek more information about, I would encourage you to watch that and schedule a call with me and see if this is something that we can move forward in terms of a solution for you that's customized for you. And I appreciate everyone watching today, and in the future I will answer any other questions that you might have if you're watching this on a replay in a later time. But I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, the weekend coming up, and the next week. And I'll see you all next week. Thanks.